Well, we've made it to week 13. This is your week 13 miniature lecture. And this week we will be discussing chapter 12, Deviance, Ethics, and Professionalism. Deviance, Ethics, and Professionalism. Do we expect our police officers, our law enforcement agencies to practice ethics? Do we expect them to be professional? Yes, we sure do. Do we expect deviance? No, we don't. But unfortunately, sometimes we run into issues where we have deviance, which brings me to the last term that's on the screen, the rotten apple theory. This rotten apple theory states that um, in giving the amount of police officers that we have a few that may end up corrupt. They do not, however, represent the majority of the police officers because we have great police officers. We have the majority of them do what they're supposed to do, but you may have that one bad apple, and unfortunately, that's the one or the officer that the media is going to focus on. That's the officer that we're going to focus on because, as I stated in one of the earlier lectures, we are a society that somehow gravitates to drama. So, the rotten apple or bad apple theory are attributes that describe the police deviance in just a few individuals. So, once you have that bad apple or rotten apple, they tend to tarnish the reputation of the entire police department. But again, I'll say the majority of police officers aren't bad. They aren't bad apples. And the media will show you what they think will sell, which is usually the deviants. So, what was developed back in 1929 were the Wickersham and the Knapp commissions. They were credited to uncovering deviants in law enforcement agencies. And these particular agencies monitored police departments, monitored sheriff's office, monitored all the governmental agencies. And at that time, they found that there was an excessive practice in inflicting pain, physically or mentally, on individuals and especially to extract confessions from them. So these were agencies set in place. A couple of, one of the court cases that the Knapp Commission focused on was New York City Mayor John V. Linson, the case that he had, and this was in 1970. And New York PD at that time had a problem with widespread corruption, widespread corruption. And so you'll get to read about that in your text. Even recently, New York has been charged with violating the stop and frisk policy, and they were fined a big fee. So as we see, corruption sometimes is embedded, and it takes a change of organization or change of leadership to uproot what's already been done. Your text defines corruption as dishonest or fraudulent conduct by public officials in position of power. And this is just not restricted to police officers. You have mayors, city council, sometimes even presidents that are found to be corrupt. So in dealing with police, your text describes two type of police that deal in corrupt behavior. The first one is the grass eater. The grass eater is a police officer who accepts small gifts and engages in minor acts of deviance, but does not actively pursue opportunities for corruption. So he's just doing a little bit of stuff. And sometimes gratuities fall up under this umbrella of a grass eater. Gratuities are the things that officers may receive free from local businesses. And you may say, well, what's wrong with them accepting gratuities? So just imagine that if, give you an example, Popeye says that we're going to give officers free chicken as long as they come by. Most of the time, the business have in mind that if they do this, that it will increase the police presence. Therefore, anyone that wants to come and rob them or anyone that wants to come and cause an issue will see that the police are there and they won't do it. So what happens during that time that the police aren't there and that organization or business is robbed? Can they then blame the police and say, well, you should have been here because we're giving you free gratuities? So it just opens up the door for too much to be said or thought that could be inappropriate to the duties of the police department because they're there, most of them, to serve and protect. So on the other hand, you have the meat eater. This is a police officer who actively seeks out and plans opportunities to exploit his or her position for personal gain. So meat eaters are the more serious, both of them are serious, but this is the more serious deviant officer. And this, for an example, this would be the type of officer that stops you and says, well, if you have sex with me, then I won't give you a ticket. Or if you pay me a certain amount of money, then I won't cite you or give you a ticket. And the meat eater is considered a very, very dangerous police officer. And lastly, there's the rogue. This is the officer that just doesn't care. I think it was Florida just had a police officer that was convicted of raping, I think, maybe 18 women. He was on duty and using that time to rape women, which is horrible. So next, your text will talk about the different type of typologies that are found in police deviants. They can operate in different kind of deviant behaviors, and which lead to corruptions. And some of that, of course, I mentioned gratuities. That advise that gratuities is kind of a minor form of deviance. Other forms of deviance will be police sexual misconduct. I just mentioned the officer that was making the women have sex with him while he was on duty. War on drugs. You have officers that sell drugs, or they are paid or on the payroll of the drug dealers. Mafia, officers that are on the payroll of mafias. And again, let me place great emphasis on that most of our officers, the majority, are very good officers. They're not corrupt, they're not bad apples, they're not practicing in deviant behaviors. But most of the time they'll find that one officer that deals in corruptions, and that's who they'll exploit. So your text will mention several terms here. Police corruption, it defines gratuity, police violence, police crime, and you will get to know and look at all of those definitions. Now, on our next slide, I want you to look at this, and I want you to focus on the case that's in Chapter 12, manslaughter and a probationary sentence. I know that we've seen this a lot where officers are brought before the court to see if maybe them murdering a victim or a suspect was justified. But this particular officer in 2016 in Conroe, Texas, was a police sergeant. I want you to read that case, and I want you to think about what happened. He shot a young man in the back of the head, killed him, and he was sentenced to 5 years of probation. 5 years of probation. So I want you to read that case and mention part of that in your discussion post. You all have a great week. Feel free to reach out to me if you need me.